But when you learn to navigate these conversations, it's not always pretty. And we're way better now than we were 10 years ago,
And I think the key is to keep having the conversations, right? It's when there is no communication that things blow up. But if you're in constant communication, even if it's, shitty like even if it's not fun to go through, but you're constantly communicating, you'll move through it. You have more chances of moving through it than letting it blow up and dividing.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the podcast. It's excellent to be back with you for another episode of Conversation with Interesting People. And hey, I don't ask this very often, but I think it's time. I think it's time you and I have a heart-to-heart. I think we need to sort of clear the air because you know what? I need you to do something for me. I need you to go and pick up a pack of chips. Now, I know it's something that everyone asks you to do, but I would really appreciate it if you're listening to this podcast on a platform like Spotify or Google or Apple or Amazon or wherever you're listening to it. Much appreciated if you do have the option of giving it a rating. I would really appreciate you giving a rating. Whatever the rating, I'm not going to force you to do what you don't want to do, but an appropriate rating would be much appreciated. And of course, as always, do share it with people you think will resonate with some of the conversations and ideas, and of course with me, and spread the word. That's basically all I'm asking you to do. Anyhow, I was thinking of this idea of growing up, right? Because as you all know, I'm 40 and I shaved the beard. I know gray beard is coming back soon. But what happened in the process, I realized I'm 40 and I'm dealing with boy issues. And by boy issues, I mean pimples. I'm trying to sit at an angle here because I found this zit, as some of the people call it, on my face. And I'm like, isn't there an age beyond which these things need to stop? The indignity, the injustice of it all needs to end right now. At what point will it be a thing where I no longer have to deal with pimples? And it's not even really a pimple, which is those things that really came in the way between you and life when you were 14 or 15, these obnoxious things which had a life of their own, growing on your nose or growing on your forehead, and they would literally glisten more than the rest of your face. And you're just like, what the fuck? And it would catch all angles of the light. And just when you're looking at that girl, it would blink off and blind her. And someone in physics class would be like, is that a prism? No, it's not a prism. It's my pimple. And it's glistening off and blinding all the potential girls I can flirt with and one day possibly be my partner. But yeah, I was thinking of this concept of boy to men. There was a boy band back when I was growing up called Boys to Men. Can't really recollect their songs, but they were kind of like, I think they were all black, or maybe they weren't all black. Maybe they were just gray. Who knows? But this was the kind of the time of Backstreet Boys and Boyzone, I think around the late 80s, 90s, and Boys to Men was a big hit. And when you listen to their music, I'm not really sure of the song names, but it really didn't identify a passage in time when they became boys to men. It was kind of still boys who are just bigger now singing about whiny shit. And it was melodic shit, but I think it was whiny shit. It was whiny shit. I'm confident about that now. But girls to women, when does this happen? Now, are we told that there's certain ages like puberty? I was going to say menopause, but clearly some women don't even grow up till then. He just said it. Yes, he did. But is it like when you start discovering hormonal changes in your body, like when you start menstruating for women or for men in today's society? Or is it a social goalpost or social line that you cross? Is when you start earning money, when you first get your first job, when you're out of college, when you're out of university? Because if that's the case, people doing their PhD till their 40s are still kids, are still boys, are still girls. And now we need to, of course, think of a new transition, right? From boys to men, from girls to women. What is the next group going to think? From, I don't know. I really am baffled for giving an option to the other gender or for the non-binary groups, because you need to coin your own terms and then I will make it a point to repeat. But I find it interesting because if you look at a lot of the people in society, they kind of live their whole life as boys or girls, and suddenly they wake up and they've retired from work and they've checked all the things which are technically age worthy. I mean, by age worthy, I mean by emotional age worthy, but none of them have aged emotionally because they still have the things that they've held on to. So boys to girls, or boys to girls, yeah, I just nailed it without even planning it. Boys to girls, girls to boys to boys, girls to girls, boys to men, girls to women. I'm curious, right? Because it's girls gone wild, right? And then you have cougars and you have women gone crazy. You don't say girls gone crazy or girls be crazy. Women gone wild. That has a better ring to it. Women gone wild, or you have desperate housewives. So the thing is, where does the shift happen, right? Is it emotional maturity? Because a lot of people say women, girls are more emotionally aware than boys, and that kind of translates to women are more emotionally mature than men. Is that true? I don't know. Is emotional maturity a good thing, right? Does it mean just because you learn how to nag, or say, for instance, emotionally mature things, or empathize, or be more aware of your feelings, it makes you a woman? Or is it okay being emotionally immature, like a girl, quote unquote, or a boy, but at the same time have the ability to kind of be younger at heart? Like, does it mean you have to grow, become more world weary if you're a woman or a man? Or can you be a boy for the rest of your life by having the things that make you a man, but still embracing the idea of being a boy or a girl? I don't know. Where does the shift happen? Where does that little point cross from girl to woman, from boy to men? Or is it that you have to listen to that album, From Boys to Men? Who knows? The world is full of mysteries when it comes to these things. But I think there needs to be a point beyond which, once you call yourself a man, there needs to be things that stop happening to you that happen like boys. Like being bullied, or feeling like crap on the playground, or feeling like crap being bullied. Because even men get bullied. It's not just a boy thing. Even girls and women get bullied. More so, I think it's more of jeering and taunting in the case of women. Of course, it happens even physically. But in the case of boys, you may be 50, but if someone replicates that behavior in the playground, at work, or say in a party or in a reunion, it still transports you back to that 15-year-old self that you were, getting bullied or getting his head kicked in on the playground because he was chubby, or because he couldn't catch the ball, or butterfingers, or whatever they call you. It lasts through manhood or womanhood or womanhood. Now, these things need to stop, right? We need to let go of the things that weighed us down as boys and girls if we want to move on to men and women. And I feel that passage of time needs to have this set of, like how we graduate from college or from school. I think we need to graduate from boys and girls to women and men. Hold on to the things that were good, right? The idea of change, the idea of learning, the idea of making new friends, the idea of playing and the playful approach to life. But shed the other shit, like pimples and things that affected you, like bullying. Because I feel that's baggage without the benefit of youth. Profound words, eh? From a pimple-bearing prick. That's a nice line, considering a pimple and a prick. I mean, you don't need to poke it. My wife keeps saying, don't poke it. And I'm like, what are you referring to? She says, the pimple. Anyhow, let me talk about today's guests. I've got Isabelle Mercier and I've got Margarita Romano, both on the same episode. The founders of LeapZone Strategy are here today to talk about a lot of things. Partners in life and partners in business. Isabelle and Margarita have been together for over, I think, 30 years. And they have applied what they've learned in life and how they've grown as partners to their business. Strategizing, helping people strategize, from small business owners to big corporations. They help people position themselves, and they help people with performance, position, and a whole lot more. Today we talk about communication, how essential it is to survive in a relationship, in a partnership, in a business, how to change when you're in that situation, how to position the story that you want to in all aspects of life, as individuals living with each other, as business partners, and for you, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a business owner. How do these factors come in, and how do they help you, and what role do they play in moving forward while keeping a sense of what your message is and what the story you want to tell is? A fascinating conversation with two lovely ladies. I'm sure you will enjoy the conversation, and there's a lot for you to take away from it. So without further ado, let's get into the conversation with Isabelle and Margarita And to you, as always, my friend, thank you so much for listening. Cheers. Margarita, Isabelle, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. Appreciate it.
Such a pleasure, honestly. We're honored.
Thank you.
Lovely to have you. So I want to understand, because you spoke about this in this talk, and it's of course something that I'm sure the two of you share, and it's a question I suppose at points as well. And it's this conversation around happiness, right? Why, this is something I'm very curious about, is that why as a society are we obsessed about happiness and chasing after it?
That's a great question. We have our own definition of happiness, and then maybe I'll start with that, and maybe it'll get to, our definition of happiness is, I don't know if it's a definition, but it's by units. We know that happiness comes and goes. It's a state of being, and you can't always be happy. And at the same time, when we work at living authentically and with intention and in the present moment, we can experience more moments of joy and happiness, right? And a lot of people think happiness is in something you buy and something you achieve and something that you create. And there's a lot of happiness in all of that. But those moments, like any other moments, they're fleeting. And so we're always chasing after it. It's like a drug that we never get enough of, right?
And I think it's what people are chasing after is the state of being, as Isabelle was saying. And that's the feeling everybody's trying to capture and stay in, except you can be in a state of being and of happiness. It's going to fluctuate. You can't always be at a peak of happy all the time. It just doesn't work that way. And then I think the issue becomes when people try to get that feeling from the exterior instead of finding it on the inside.
And I think one thing I'd like to add to that, Sandeep, is I have on my desk, I have a little Post-it that says, happily surprise me. And every day as I do the work that I love, the work that I don't love, the things that I don't want to do, the things that I think are going to take me longer and it's going to be so much more complicated than it is, I always try to approach it in how much letting go can I do here? And how much can I allow things to just be what they are? And so happiness, I'll say universe, happily surprise me. And it's incredible how intention matters in everything that we do, I
really like that that sense of surrendering, because there is this constant need to feel a certain way, which is being told to people by, and as you said, these things are essential, right? Being authentic to yourself, doing things with intention, but at the same time, a lot of those things seem like an alien concept to people because it's being told by someone who's already seemingly more happy or seemingly more successful. And you hear it on your social media, the mentors or the influencers, like, I live an authentic life, so I'm happy. and it's great, of course. But for someone to feel what it means to be authentic is very different from being told what it means to be authentic. So when you said this surrendering idea, I really, I think when you sit and you do what you choose to do, which by the way takes a lot of people a lot of time to arrive at, because they're being torn in so many different directions by the family pressure, the commitment to what they have, maybe they've taken loans, they've taken things. So when they get out of college or they get to university, they're like, this dream of sitting and doing what I want to do, it seems very unrealistic for many people. So when you I like that when you surrender to the universe. And I think that's a sense of respecting the fact that every state of being, whether it's confused, whether it's indecisive, whether it's sad or, frustrated, all these things deserve as much respect as just the happiness, which everyone seems to be wanting, and the attachment to that happiness, which, after a point, if you're constantly happy, then you're either crazy or you're on some good drug, which I want, you know?
Yeah. And you know what? I'm glad you said that because as Margarita said, happiness is a state of fluctuation. It cannot be sustained equally all the time. Yet there are things like we work at this every day. I have plenty of tattoos, but one of them right here on my forearm says happiness is when what I think, what I say, and what I do are in harmony. And my work every day is to say what I mean what I say, and be in alignment with me. And the more in alignment I am with me, the more units of happiness I can experience. And we call it collect, right? Yeah. Like we want to collect units of happiness. It's not really a gathering, but
even recognize.
Yeah.
Right. Like because there are different levels of happiness, keeping your awareness focused on what those could look like automatically brings more happiness into your life.
So the two of you, of course, you kind of have approached this together, but do you sense, because I've heard this from, some places when it comes to conversations around joy and happiness and fulfillment, is by giving others makes some people more happy than doing for themselves. Is that something that you have you work towards or recognized as a thing that helps in building the units?
Absolutely. Yes. For me, if I feel down, unhappy for whatever reason, the first thing that I want to do is I want to either write a love note, send a thank you, call someone and just let them know how much I care. And I tend to connect out and really be of service, be of value, and make someone's day. And automatically that just shifts my whole perspective on things. And it's amazing as well how the universe works. When I feel less than or all of the above that I just mentioned, often I'll get an email from some out of the blue. We haven't seen this person or heard of this person for a while, right? Out of the blue, we'll get a Voxer message or an audio voicemail or something that'll say, man, you've impacted me so much. Thank you so much. Here's what I've been able to do. And it's incredible how much fueling that does, because we're aware, none of us are fully aware of the impact that we have, truly. And only a handful of people at some point will share that. And most of the time it comes at a really good time, And
I think the more you're able to stay present in life in general, especially with people, just being present, if you're present, you are present to what is not only happening for you, but what is happening for somebody else. And so you can more easily be there for other people in that state. And so it's amazing what comes back with you without even knowing that you were there for somebody just from being present.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something which I think is so essential, right? Because there's this need right now for people to tell, whoever's listening, it's like, I know so much, right? Because there's so much information out there. So that's almost become a sense of, I read these many articles about mental health. So they know all the right terms. Like, if you ask someone, they've got every diagnosis, right? I have anxiety, I have depression, I have and it's knowing versus feeling, which I think you mentioned really nicely over here about when you're sitting with someone, you talk to them as opposed to you kind of sit with them and you kind of appreciate that conversation, because a conversation, of course, is two-way. But I think that's not happening as much, because a lot of people are just spouting out fact or spouting out information that they gathered about whatever the situation or the conversation's about, whether it's about work, and as a result, what happens is the exchange of ideas is kind of blocked, because it's two people just shouting or even softly speaking at each other without acknowledging what the person needs. So when they leave that conversation, it's almost like, what just happened? They don't even know how that time passed by or how the other person felt at the end of that. And I think,
I was on a flight once, and there's two kinds of listening, right? You can listen to respond, or you can listen to understand. And I'm a very talkative person, and usually there's a good exchange of conversation between who I'm talking with and me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And on a long flight once years ago, all I did was asking questions. This person I knew needed to talk, and all I did was ask a few questions. And this person at the end of a 5-hour flight said, "Best conversation I've ever had." And I thought, I barely said anything, right? But this person felt like I was curious, like I wanted to know more, like he was interesting, and it had him feel valued and like he mattered in that moment, And that's also part of, in that whole creating units of happiness, is not just for my happiness, it's for yours, it's for the people that we're with,
Yeah, that's such a strange thing, because when I was, I did stand up for 13 years before, maybe a little less before the pandemic. And I was talking, of course, as you just mentioned, I was talking and I was getting laughter for that. I was getting people coming for my shows. But now when I do this, which is the podcast, and I talk to people, I'm asking a lot more questions. And I take that, of course, beyond the podcast. And it's strange, the difference, because when I was the stand-up comedian in a group, the attention was, of course, the pressure was on to make people laugh on or off stage. And it was, a little tiring. It was a little, constantly trying to put on this front of being the funny guy. But when I do this and I talk to people, I'm not so much talking to people, but the sense of, the sense of importance that a person feels when they're asked a few questions is really, it's really sad that not many people are getting that, because it's almost like everyone just has to show how much they know, or whether it's online or whether it's in person or whether it's through a conversation, that even sometimes I catch myself when I'm talking about a certain topic, about whether it's parenting or a school, and I'm just like, hey, back off, let the person speak, because you know what, you have a podcast, you can speak as much as you want. let them have their moment, and automatically the conversation just feels less tense,
Yeah, totally.
But yeah, no, so I'm just, because this idea of a relationship now is also, it comes with a lot of pressure, whether it's a business relationship, whether it's a romantic relationship. And I want to understand, when you set these things that we've spoken about in a context of business, because I think, Margarita, you mentioned the idea of, external happiness versus internal. And these things, of course, are very, very true, that we need. And if you look at it, actually, what we've just spoken about is pretty much what everyone wants in life, right? A sense of purpose, a sense of doing it with intention, a sense of being able to sit back and say, you know what, let the universe surprise me. I think these are, I would say, hey, the conversation ends here today, because that's exactly what, a person's life can be, and that's the fulfillment of life. But it comes with a lot of baggage, comes with a lot of distractions, which are, of course, these things that you too have seen in business, which is the external pressures, right, of getting investment, getting funding, getting successful clients, getting reviewed by people, getting on the top of all these lists. So how do both of you approach this without feeling the pressure of the real world, quote unquote?
There's always some sort of pressure, but we've been together for a very long time. We're 31 years together as a couple, but also as business partners. So
wow.
I'm sure there's an award for this, Sandeep, somewhere, right?
That's being on this podcast. I'm joking.
I'm sure there's an award for this achievement. Having said that, we're very different. I'm about outcome. Margarita is about overcome. Mm-hmm. And as we work with people, it's not just about the outcome, although the outcome is important. I'm a destination kind of person. She's a journey kind of person. And of course, now with 31 years of being together, I have become more of a journey person.
We've met down the middle.
We have met down the middle. Yes. And that's part of how we work. We work very intentionally. Margarita partners with horses to actually help people on an energetic basis, right? With their energy of being, because people mainly don't know what it is to be at the receiving end of their energies. And so we navigate the outcome, overcome, and the units of happiness are very present in the work that we do, whether we rebrand a company, whether we coach an executive team and their entire workforce. It is about having brave conversations. It's about setting rhythms together that are going to be good for everybody. And it's about creating a set of boundaries that's going to allow people to just flourish in the way that they are meant to flourish.
Through,
you know what I mean?
Through clarity, through boundaries. Yeah. Boundaries are kind, right? Because they create clarity.
Right. Margarita, could you talk a little bit more about the energy, the receiving of energy which people are experiencing, or rather which you make them experience?
Yes. Well, because I partner with horses and they are prey animals, they are animals that are constantly reading the energy in their environment to know if they're in danger.
Uh-huh.
And so it doesn't matter if it's an animal or a person. If you're in their environment, they're reading your energy. And what they do beautifully is they act like mirrors. So they will reflect the energy in the environment. So when I bring somebody into their environment, their behavior is a reflection of the person, and it allows me, and I read their behavior. That's what my expertise is in. So, and I get to coach a person in the presence of the horses being mirrors for them. And the interesting thing is horses don't care about what you're thinking. Like this is not the energy that they're tuned into. They're tuned into what we're holding in our bodies. And oftentimes that's the stuff in our bodies is what people tend to ignore or tend to not pay attention to. It's always more the thoughts. But our body has a lot of knowledge. And so the horses bring us back to that.
No, it's tremendous because, you know, when you go, whether it's near a horse or even, you know, your pet at home, sometimes when you visit, you can tell the kind of person who lives there seeing the pet, right? Because the dog's aggressive or jumping around all over the place, like badly. And that's crazy because when I was young, I used to go horse riding and I never was comfortable for various reasons, right? Because I was not scared, but I get, oh my God, because the energy of the horse is, I mean, how much, you know, you can train the horse, you can ride the horse, but this whole energy thing is quite, you know, mind-boggling because you can, especially in the business thing, you have people who are wearing suits and coming here, and those things which impress in the business world, I don't think Black Beauty cares about it. You know, I'm just giving, sorry if your horse is not called Black Beauty, but.
Absolutely, you're right. Like they have no ego and no judgment. So they're not looking at your credentials. They're not looking at what's been achieved or not achieved, or they are simply a reflection.
And it's actually quite incredible because they sense, as you said, Margarita, they sense what's in the body, and they do not care what the person looks like, what their culture is, what their gender is. Energy is energy, and Margarita can read that energy. And the transformation of the clients that we work with are deeper, more long-lasting than when we did not have this, I will say, methodology, when Margarita did not partner with horses. And horses can smell bullshit miles away. And so, you know, there are little bullshit detectors, and we can get to the core of truly of someone way faster.
No, that's so important, right? Because we all go for these workshops about how to speak more effectively or how to read body language, or it's so full of crap, right? Because someone's like, yeah, my posture tells me how I'm going to be a successful CEO. But I think every so often just go near an animal and they'll tell you whether you have good energy or not. You know, I think it's
absolutely.
But isn't that, I mean, I just want to, you know, understand, because you work with startups, you work up with young entrepreneurs or maybe old entrepreneurs. I don't know the age group of the entrepreneurs, but when it comes to the conversations they have, because in India right now, startups are the new thing, right? Every other person has a startup, and they have these requirements to make these pitches, this elevator thing, this is where they go to people and get funding. But how do you approach it with this? Because there's a lot of knowledge that you get through working in a corporation, in a company, and you work on the story. But how does someone just out of college or just out of university get the idea of or get this balance of, okay, there is the things you need to put in, which is hard work. You need to build a good team. You need to get a good idea. But on the flip side, there is this, you need this sense of, okay, I need to approach it with a more, with the sense of, okay, if I do fail, there is a reason for it. So how do you approach a more holistic way when you work with people like this?
Well, our methodology is very holistic. We look at positioning, personality, and performance. And within these three, there's, mindset and inner game. There's not only, money and KPIs and sales and marketing, but there's mindset and inner game. And there
team
are
dynamics.
Team dynamics.
There's the people, the logical, the tactical. We go into all the areas because some people are naturally stronger in certain areas than others. So it's important to make sure that all areas are being reviewed and elevated.
At the end of the day, we help entrepreneurs be either the first, the best, or the only. And so we help them with their messaging, their positioning, their business strategy, with their marketing strategy. Basically, we're about helping an entrepreneur become successful. At the same time, there's a lot of things that you can learn, and there's a lot of things that just come with time. There's, I've known certain things since I was a little girl, and they're just really, truly landing now, and I'm 51. So there's things that actually, much like wine, it just needs to just steep there for a while and get better with age and get better with experience. The biggest thing we need to work on with entrepreneurs is to help them relax, because manifestation only happens in a state of relaxation. And so, if we're all wound up all the time, and I'm speaking to myself as much as everybody else here, whatever we talk about today, we practice and we work in our day-to-day life every minute of every day. We don't just talk about it. But there's you said it earlier, there's an expectation of oneself. Other people have expectations of us, right, as human beings. And we don't like to make mistakes as human beings. We don't like to look stupid. We don't like to. So, of course, there's a desire to perform and do well. And a lot of my best experiences and biggest knowledge have come from big screw ups and things that, I didn't want to happen, and it was shameful and difficult. But in that came amazing gems. And so that's just part of the journey. You're going to have some really good deals, and you're going to have some really bad deals, and you're going to think you're going to have good deals, and they're going to turn out to be bad, and you're going to think they're bad, and they're going to turn out to be good, and so on and so forth, right?
Yeah.
But we believe that with some smarts and some intelligence around methodology that is not just about ROI, but it's about mindset and inner game. It's about enjoying the journey to getting there. We sold our first business at 32, 33 years old, because we didn't feel happy in there anymore. And it was taxing on our relationship. And so was it a big decision? Yeah, we spent a lot of sleepless nights crying and trying to figure out what we wanted to do when we grew up, Meanwhile, we were actually quite successful, but it didn't feel happy anymore. So what's the point of having a bunch of money or having the title of uber successful if inside you're screaming and you're not feeling right,
That's such an important feeling to recognize, because my wife runs she's an entrepreneur. She runs a e-commerce startup. I think it is e-commerce startup. And I do this, and it felt so good after the lockdown to do this podcast, and it still feels good. But as I told you, we just recently went to New York, and the conversation there with the people we met is all about the money, right? It's about we're in the heart of Soho and you look around, it's like, what's the cost of this apartment? It's just money being spoken about, of course, amongst other things. But I came back with that on my mind, right? And then this place where I was, which you said, the relaxed place where you're enjoying what you're doing and you're not panicking about, oh my God, because my wife and I have a, I think she's a 16-month-old baby. And, you have all those pressures that come with that, like, oh my God, school starts, or what, a preschool, and then school, and then you have to plan for a future. And I came back with all those thoughts, as opposed to me saying I enjoy the conversation and I enjoy these conversations and I learn from that. As you said, sometimes you have these failures or you have these things, but things come out of it, the gems or the learning or the things that you take away from it. But when you're in this mindset of just money and what you need to do to get it and what you need money for and what it's going to do for you, it just almost feels claustrophobic and you can't think of anything else and what satisfaction those other things give you or the fulfillment those other things give you. So is there a way to do these things without keeping a price tag attached to it or, worrying about it? Because the moment money comes in the conversation, I feel it just flips everything on its head.
You're right. And, so many times recently, even we've had conversations with friends around, what if the world was not driven by money? What if money just disappeared and we just traded services and products and everybody had what everybody needs to survive well and live? I mean, there are people who have more money than they'll even be able to fathom in their lifetime and in 5-6 generations of their loved ones. And some people have none at all. And I mean, that's just so ridiculous. But in the end, I speak from experience. I have been very stressed about money in my earlier years. And Margarita was obviously privy to this. And Margarita always had more of a trust factor around money. And, it's there and it's going to be fine. And we're resourceful and we're always going to make it work, And for me, it was always like, oh, thank God we had that client, because where would we have been? Or thank God. And it was always, even though we were doing well, it was always a bit of a survival speak, And I remember my coach saying to me, why do you always speak like you're in survival mode? And I was like, well, because I feel like we're in survival mode, but we're not. I mean, it felt like we were, and sometimes we truly are.
Yeah.
But the majority of the time, it's just this concept of more and better, and more is better, and it really, and it's funny. Recently, just in our last coaching session, how when people say, "Oh, this happened to me." And then now the conversation recently shifted to this happened for me instead of to me. You take a little bit more responsibility, right? And in our last coaching session, we were talking about this happened from me. And I thought, that's actually pretty amazing when you think about that. So when you think about things don't happen to you, they don't necessarily happen for you, but they happen from you. So whatever you see happening, it's basically you created. So this gives a sense of maybe a bit of control, because if something is happening, you can't control it. There's nothing to be done about that. But I can control my thoughts. And that's much easier said than done, by the way. Everybody knows that we all want to control our thoughts and slow down, and it's much easier said than done. But ultimately, what were you going to say?
Well, and on the note of thoughts, I think if you relate that back to money, for me, when I started to really treat money like energy and that it has a flow, it comes in, it goes out, comes in, it goes out. When I started trusting what was going out and trusting what was coming in, the flow, the manifesting of the flow becomes more, I don't know if it's effortless or more abundant, or maybe just because I trust in it more, it feels like it is there. So I trust in that, and it ends up changing my relationship to or with money.
That's lovely. I'm like that. I mean, I haven't looked at it as an energy kind of context, but when I think of money as a responsible person, it annoys me because I've never been responsible about money. I've never saved and invested. And so when I hear that, of course you get on YouTube, you're like, you're 40 and you haven't invested. Are you crazy? And I'm like, oh my God, am I crazy? But, but realistically, I love spending on others. And but I don't call it, like philanthropic work. I just, when I was younger, it would be, okay, you know what? You don't have a beer in your hand. I'm going to buy everyone a round of beers, because I felt that at the end of the evening, I'm not counting how many dollars or rupees I have in my pocket, but people had a good time. And that mattered more for me than how much I'm going back home with. But if I take that forward to today and, I have a family now, and if I say, if I tell my wife, hey, I'm going out with 1,000 rupees and I'm going to come back with absolutely nothing, because you know what? Who cares about tomorrow? She's like, are you crazy? You have a kid to look after. So where does that change? Because I like the idea of letting money be just a tool. But at the same time, where is the responsibility of providing for your family or your future or for whatever it may be, taking care of you? Because let's be honest, you need money to live, right? But can we separate the responsibility aspect? Because as you said, Isabel, there are people who can barely make the end of the day because they don't have any money. And then there are people who've got generations worth of wealth, which just keeps growing without them doing anything, because of the way it is. But more than the actual amount of money or money as a reward system, can we change the psychology of how we and as you said, Margarita, the energy aspect of money? But like, if we can have fun with money, right? Does money have to be a serious thing? Every time we talk about it, it's like investment.
Exactly.
Can we have yeah.
And in fact, one thing that we've implemented years and years ago, and this is going to sound a bit weird, but we have a gambling fund, and we don't gamble. It's not like I go to Vegas and gamble my money. Mm-hmm. However, we are responsible. She is more responsible than I am money-wise, but
which is a good thing, because I manage it.
I make it, and she manages. I mean, we all have our roles. However, it's this gambling fund started because in our previous business, I would test things sometimes with designs and with things. We had a branding agency, and some things worked well and some things flopped. And every time it flopped, I felt so bad. I felt like, such a waste of time and energy and money. And so at the time, our coach had said, we've been coached our entire life together. And we're 10 years ahead of our business plan all the time as a result of being coached. But he said to us, what is such a big deal here? You made an experiment. It didn't go well. Sometimes you're going to make an experiment. It's going to go well. Sometimes you're going to go out. It's going to cost you more than than some other times. So we have times where we take some of our money and put it somewhere and pray that it's going to make babies. And we have a place where we have money where we can do what we want with it. It might be buying a software and seeing if it, and then it turns out to be shitty. That's fine. It might be that we're going to take a different mode of transportation to get from A to B and test that out. It might be that we want to actually do an experience together and not feel guilty about it. So the goal, how that started, was exactly to remove our mind, mainly my attachment to be effective and proactive and smart with money, and just give myself a bit of slack around the money in that place is not to be thrown just in the garbage, obviously, but it's no matter what we do with it, whether it's positive or it ends up being a flop, it's okay. It's safe. It's a little bit like on your birthday, there are no calories. That's the kind of account that we have for that. And it's taught me so much, actually.
And I think if we go back to the concept that money is energy and it flows in, it flows out, it's also about managing our reactions to things. So let's say an opportunity comes in, you really want it, you don't get it. You could spend a very long time being upset or pitying yourself or whatever it is because you didn't get that opportunity. And if you stay in that, you're going to miss the next opportunity in the flow, right? So if you trust that that opportunity came and it went and it wasn't meant for you, you'll be ready for the next opportunity. And it's the same when money's going out. You know, you win some, you lose some, right? And if you get stuck in the energy of one or the other, you miss the next thing.
Right. But you know, you mentioned that the two of you have an understanding about you know, who handles what, and you figured out this place that you've arrived at over the past years. But you know, sometimes in a relationship, you Margarita, you said you handle and you manage the money, right? Which is great that you both have the trust that, you know, you're going to do the right thing for both of you. But in many cases, there's the dynamics of the relationship and money don't really go well, because it becomes a power play, right? It becomes a thing where, whether it's the man or the wife, or the husband or the wife, or whoever it may be, the partners, if one person has control of the finances, it doesn't bode too well for the other partner. And as a result, what happens then, it becomes that, you know, if both people in the relationship have money, like I see this in India, right? Like right now, like the woman, especially because it's been, you know, the odds are stacked against women in India for many years. It's like, oh no, I have to work. And as a result, I can't be at home. And then it just plays different numbers in the relationship. And as a result, money either becomes a thing of breaking the relationship or weighing the scales against one person in the relationship.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'll just clarify something. Like, I manage the money.
Mm-hmm.
However, from the beginning, we've treated each other like employees from the beginning.
Okay.
So we are everything is even, everything is fairly divided. Over the years, I mean, it has been over 30 years. So over the years, you know, she's trusted how I manage the ins and outs of the money. But at any moment, I in no way am the only one that can.
No.
If she needed ever to jump in, she could. She has access to everything I have access to. So I think it's
there was a time though that when I was more uptight with money, there was moments where we disagreed, you know, like you wanted to do certain things or manage a certain way. I'm not quite sure. I can't have a good example right now, but I remember being more stressed about it than you were. And
well, you were more tied to outcomes then.
I was very tied to outcome. I still am to a certain degree, but I've relaxed around that. And so, I mean, there's cultural differences, there's men, women differences, there's depends on how you were raised, where you were raised, how much your family had money versus not had money. I mean, we have money triggers left, right, and center on this planet, right?
Yeah.
We also started this from the ground up. You know, like we were
18, so it's not like
we both came in with the bare minimum. Zero.
Yeah.
So we've grown this together, which is also different. It's different when somebody in a relationship comes in and one is already established and the other one's not. Right. It's a different dynamic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're getting me to realize that there's so many, because we're two women together, first of all. I mean, in 30 years ago, this was not an easy conversation to have with our parents that are absolutely Catholic to the bones, you know? But despite, it's funny, a lot of couples have a variety of different issues, trust issues, money issues, they don't agree on how to raise the children. And so we thought we were going to have a very big issue, which is we're two women together. We're going to have to like prove ourselves the whole time in our careers. And funny enough, that was not that much of an issue. And because we got together really young, we grew together, we were coached together. So there's a lot of these issues, money issues, and not to say that there isn't, but I guess it maybe is less because we grew up together, we were coached together. Of course, we went like this a few times, obviously apart and together and apart and together. It has not been all rainbows and unicorns. But I'm realizing that there's a level of maturity that we've gained over the years that I'm like realizing that in this moment, going, oh, we've done some good, a good chunk of work,
Yeah.
Not to say, not to pat myself on the back by no means, but it's a nice realization to say, wow, we've gone through a shit ton, and we're here, and we're still together, and we had money issues and trust issues at some point, and being two women together issues, and we're artists, for crying out loud. We could have been told a million times, don't go get yourself a real job,
Yeah. No, and
but we're ourselves, and we thought we're just going to stay with the camera. We're just going to stay who we are, and we're going to follow our hearts, and we're going to support each other in that journey. And we're going to try not to kill each other throughout. That's how it goes.
That's the, besides all the other things, this is what is amazing about it, right? Like anything else is, an add-on, but just this part of your relationship, your story is something which is amazing. And, because when, I've been, I better get this number right in case my wife's listening, but I've been married now for, going on 8 years. It's going to be 8 years this December. Okay. And just when we got married, just the whole relationship with money was, she wanted to not take over the thing, but be more involved in thing, because at that point she just started a company. I was more established in stand-up, getting more she like, and the way it affected me was almost like, because I was conditioned to believe that the person providing in the relationship, I mean, as a man, I have to make the money, and just the way it's changed since then. Right. I mean, the biggest change is that I'm not making any money now, so that works well. But the thing which I think is so important that you just said is, you can have all these things where you start out in your relationship, whether it's marriage or just dating, with both people having no money, or one person coming in with more, or one person with the potential of making more. And right. In 10 years, you see that person no longer together. They've got divorced, or they're no longer together because money was the issue, right? One person's ego got bruised beyond repair, or both people couldn't see eye to eye on what they want to do with money. But then you see people who've 30 years later, like you, the two of you, who had issues with money, but had other issues socially as well. But you acknowledge, and this is something which I really, strikes a chord with me, is that if because I know some personal examples where people had to end the relationship or chose to end the relationship because of money. But then if you get past that and you acknowledge why you're together, and everything else is just a part of the story that you're trying to build as a relationship, as a couple, because you can have your own lives, you can have your own story, you can have your own business, you can have your own interests, and you can have your own passion projects. But essentially, why are you together? And I think that's something which both of you represent so beautifully.
Thank you. And we've had to recommit to that many times. Mm-hmm. We almost, I think it was 3 or 4 times that we were literally leaving each other and having these tough conversations. And I think one thing is, we're not afraid of having brave conversations that may alter the course of a relationship or of our life. We've altered the course of our life many times as a result of having brave conversations. And money, whether you have issues with money now or at the divorce time, I mean, we all know people that loved each other dearly, and suddenly don't love each other, and now it's war about money. Yeah. And so for us, we have our life for 31 years. We've been longer together than alive apart. Yeah. So our lives are so entangled that we have someone in charge. Like, if we don't agree on something major, we have someone that's in charge of actually making a decision for us. We have someone that's in charge of taking over our business if at some point we are going cuckoo or want to hate each other's guts, which after 31 years, I would hope that would never happen. But one thing that we do have is a lot of respect for one another. So we do argue, we do bicker, We don't get along all the time. And sometimes we're a whole day without talking to each other. We're together, but we're apart while being together. And that's just part of life. And it's part of what I need or what she needs in the moment. But we've set ourselves up to not fall in the trap of the money hatred trap that may occur at some point or another in a relationship. Especially, I mean, we have a successful business together, and we have animals and we have employees, and too many lives at stake here for a bad argument to go wrong, you know?
Yeah. Which is something that a lot of people need to kind of recognize, right? Because these outer trappings can easily kind of blind you to why you're with that person. And you can go, people call it the honeymoon phase, or you go on holidays, you go party. But then when things aren't very good, then you're like, why am I with this person? Or it becomes a power play, like, oh my God, she's me, or my work's more important than hers, or his work is earning more. It just becomes a very bad spiral that you can't get, wrap your head around. And next thing you know, it's just, you're asking yourself the wrong questions, and you're kind of working yourself up in this frenzy where you're like not looking at the person for who they are, but you're looking at them for all these things they either did or didn't bring into the relationship, whether it's and that's a scary place to be, because then you're just like, that person becomes an Excel sheet and not a person,
Yeah,
Right.
Totally. And, and in our relationship as well, there has been some difficulties around, I'm the one who did mainly work with clients, and she took care of managing and doing all the back end stuff. And we've had some conversations around, this is important. Without this, you wouldn't have any back end stuff to do. And so we've had these weird, crazy conversations, but they're triggered by, we're humans,
Yeah.
And then we're like, well, you know what? Yeah. Without your work, none of mine would actually exist. And without my work, none of her work would exist either. So it's different and it's important. And mine has more client deadlines than hers, but she has more government deadlines and other deadlines that I don't have to deal with at all, right? So, but when you learn to navigate these conversations, it's not always pretty, and we're way better now than we were 10 years ago,
And I think the key is to keep having the conversations, right? It's when there is no communication that things blow up. But if you're in constant communication, even if it's shitty like even if it's not fun to go through, but you're constantly communicating, you'll move through it. You have more chances of moving through it than letting it blow up and dividing.
I think it's really cool too that Margarita wrote a book 5 years ago, a bestseller book, the red book behind me here, Sitting on the Fence, a journey, how to love without limits. And because I'm not gay, she's not gay, but we happen to be together because we fell in love with the soul. Why I'm saying this is, over the weekend, we recorded the Audible, and
lovely.
we narrated it, and I have some parts in there, so I narrated my parts. But the beauty of all this is, it was big through memory lane, because a lot of the pieces in there are in the first 2 years of our relationship, way back when. And it was amazing to see, even at the beginning when she wrote the book, it was my life, her life, but it's the life seen through her lens. And so when I read the book initially, I thought, wow, that is fascinating, because I was there, but I could tell a very different story about that event, And so bring that into the mix of life and work and money. We all have our lenses. We all see things differently based on our backgrounds and how we were raised and our culture. And that just is intricate and beautiful. And the more we can respect that and let that shine out of each other, the better,
It's a great message. Yeah. So obviously, the two of you have seen so much over the past 31 years, individually and together. So I just want to this is not a business related, this is not related to your business or what you do, but just with the climate of where we are today, with all these things. And Isabel, you just mentioned, the two of you been together and you found each other and for the reasons you did. But what do you make of what we are experiencing right now with all the accusations, with the various groups of people, with the transgender, with the gay, with so many groups? I don't even know if I can count all of them. With all this pointing, with all this pointing fingers, blaming and accusations about how, as a result of oppression, they've done. So maybe, I don't have a question, but I just want to understand from both of you finding a reason to be together, and looking at the situation where people just want to kind of point and say, because of someone, I am like this. What do you make of it?
I believe that because of how do I want to say this? I believe people are finding the courage more and more to show up, basically. And that is bringing more and more different ways of being to the surface, whether it's through identity, through gender, through how, how the relationships, there are many more, like we're going back, like we've been together, it's going to be 32 years this year.
Yeah.
And even going back to the beginning of those 32 years, there was pretty much male, female, heterosexuality. Yeah. And then people have heard of gay people and lesbians, but, barely. It was not really talked about or, so, and that was just in one relationship. Like we've moved through to being today where, there's not only, identifying as a woman or a man, it's like being two men, being two women, being not identifying as a man or a woman,
used to be a man is now a woman.
Yeah.
So
many. And I think that for me, I think it's people are finding the courage to speak up.
And I think at the end of the day, it's about recognition. We all want to be recognized for who we are. And there's a pendulum, and the pendulum was too little. The pendulum is going to go too complex, and eventually it'll find its middle. But in the end, people want to be seen. We want to be heard. We want to be understood. And in order to be seen, heard, and understood, we need to be more ourselves. And
what it's doing is it's creating new generations that have a completely different view on it all than ours or the generation before us, or that,
Yeah, like your nephew,
Yeah, like my niece and nephew, there's no issue. It's like, it's an open book and you are who you are and that's it. We love you for it. Whereas,
which is amazing, right?
It hasn't necessarily been.
Yeah. I think the way things changed with the way, I wouldn't call it values, because I think that comes with a little bit of a morality to it. But I would say just the way the world is viewed, it's like, it's cool. Like I remember when, 1991, I think, or 1990, 91 is when I got diagnosed with this eye condition. It was just so stressful for my mom to ask schools whether they have assistance and accommodate the needs that I had back then, whether it's, a scribe or whether it's, whatever it was at that time. We in the 1990s, I don't even think, I think they just invented paper back then, So.
Yeah.
So till today, when I just look around and I feel it's gone to the other end of the spectrum where everyone's like, celebrate disability. I'm like, you don't have to celebrate disability, but I get what you just said. People want to be recognized for the story that they've lived. And it's amazing how now, I go in a wheelchair and, it's fine. I take a wheelchair. People are like, why do you take a wheelchair? I'm like, because you get through security a lot quicker, and at the airport.
Exactly. Good for you. It's got to have perks, man. It's got to have perks.
Absolutely. And it's really funny. Like when we travel now, my wife has the baby. So obviously she can't assist me. Like earlier we'd just go and, she'd help me out. I take the airport assistance and I hold someone's arm. They take me through the security line, through the staff entrance. And suddenly I look behind me, my wife, my daughter, my in-laws, everyone's following. I'm like, you have to go through the regular line. Now they're just piggybacking on me getting quick access. Yeah.
You've got your entourage.
Yeah, we're with him. We're with him.
Correct. It's a collective disability now.
That's right, exactly.
But it's fun. You know, I think what I really appreciate that both of you bring, you know, have brought today to the conversation beyond all your knowledge and the work you've done is this spirit of having, of seeing and recognizing what you both, what you each mean to the other, and being, you know, able to communicate as you change over the course of time, because I'm sure that two of you will agree that you're no longer the people you were in 1990, 91.
Correct.
But
that's true.
Being able to kind of grow at the same time, give each other what you need, I think is very hard in today's day and age, where it's so easy to quit and just say, move on to the next person or the next project or the next relationship to become a better version of myself, with all these things being thrown at you. I think it's, you know, I recognizing that, and, you know, for me to hear your story, I think I'm very privileged, and I'd like to thank you for that.
Well, thank you for seeing that and recognizing that. I mean, I know recently, one of our last TED Talk together, the message was to strengthen a relationship, be it a professional relationship or a personal relationship. You got to be brave together. You got to flow together, and you've got to grow together. And that's choosing to grow with her, despite of everything we've gone through, despite of everything we're going to get through, is a choice. And we think it's sometimes greener somewhere else, but wherever you go where it's greener, there's always going to be greener somewhere else. And so might as well make a decision, make a commitment, and then work through the kinks to get through this commitment. And it's not that I'm against other choices, divorce and all of that. I mean, you be you, right? Yeah. I be me, you be you. And the world hopefully will get to become a better place if we're all more of who we are, you know?
Well said. Now, thank you so much. I really appreciate you both joining me today. Margarita, thank you. Isabelle, thank you. And it's been a pleasure chatting with you and hearing your story and your words of wisdom and all the knowledge you've shared with me and people listening today. Thank you.
You're welcome. And thank you for your energy.
Thank you.
Yes. And thank you for inviting us.
My pleasure. It was lovely chatting with both of you today. Thank you.
Lovely.
Hey, thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you liked what you heard, please do check out the other episodes on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. And I would much appreciate it if you could like the video, share it with people who you think might enjoy it. And of course, do subscribe to the channel, because it will help me and the podcast grow and reach more people just like you. So thanks again. Appreciate it.